Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Back for another week,
Back
gentlemen.
for another week.
Back for another week.
He said drink.
He did
Drink,
the
we've all
thing.
got
It's
our-
the name of the thing.
I have bingo. Oh, I'm the only one who doesn't have a glass of wine with him. I
Tom,
feel
we
really left out.
discussed this prior to the show. You've got to be infused with alcohol to be able to talk on the airwaves.
To
Obviously.
both perform the show and to listen to the show, it is generally recommended to have imbibed a significant amount of alcohol for maximum enjoyment. Drink
Yes.
responsibly. Today's
It is
episode...
also highly not recommended to be operating heavy machinery while listening to Unnatural Selection.
Yeah, this is true. Today's episode brought to you by Mount Pleasant High Peacock Shiraz Vintage 2018 from the Hunter Valley. And, getting a cease and desist. Oh, there you go.
Oh, George, how did you know? Anyway, so we're streaming today on Twitch, which we've done for the last couple of weeks.
Mainly...
I think ever since we decided Facebook was evil.
Yeah. I was gonna say it really doesn't have. It wasn't really so much a choice as much as it was like that sort of that whatever it was, a week or 2 weeks where Facebook banned news, as you know, swinging their big dick all over Australia, and we said even though it's most likely not going to benefit us, it's actually going to hurt us. We're not going to stream with you anymore because we don't like you. And Facebook said, sorry, who said that? What? Huh? Oh, look, guys, our traffic's gone down.
We're too busy counting all our money.
Our traffic's gone down 0.000000025%. That's the weirdest thing. Maybe we should investigate that.
Meanwhile, our traffic here at the podcast went down by 75%, but that's
plummeted.
fine.
But the good news is, Adam, comparative to the small amount of traffic we were already getting, it really doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, great. It's all the net difference is
like
negligible.
Percentage-wise, devastating, very upsetting. But like in pure numbers, not that much of a difference.
I'm just really excited to be on Twitch, though. We're just in such great company with the Modern Warfare streamers. The girl that's currently streaming half naked in a bathtub with a pickle Rick.
Sorry, which one? That doesn't really narrow it down.
Just go to the homepage, and I'm sure you'll be able to navigate your way through.
The fact that it's on the homepage, Adam, actually speaks a lot to your Twitch analytics.
I don't have a Twitch account, though, so they can't be tracking me because I'm not logged in.
It knew to recommend it to you. So I don't know what to tell you, Adam. Numbers don't lie. But you know what? Power to her. She was streaming last week, writing down her fans' names on a Pickle Rick blow-up thing while in an indoor hot tub for donations. And she's back this week with a fresh Pickle Rick, like it's Sans names, ready to do it again. You know what? If I could be doing that for my day job, you know what? I think I'd probably be a lot happier.
I'd quit tomorrow. It's not even a question. Not even all I had to do was sit in a hot tub writing names of the people who were giving me money on Pickle Rick in my underwear. I'd hand in my resignation before. I can't, like, the quickness. Yeah. I can't even describe the quickness at which I would cease all real work.
I think I would use the stream as my resignation.
just stop going to work and then just announce it online.
Just do an all office email just with the link.
Yeah, just you hear the little cha-chings, and you go,
yeah,
and $4,000 a month. All right, yeah. I resign. Yeah. Hey, buddy. I think just say your boss's name, direct straight to camera. Hey, bud, you're never going to hear from me again. So,
yeah. I think it just goes to show, much like we talked about a few weeks ago, George, you and I, maybe even longer, when we were just talking about the modern economy and just the new kind of ways that people can earn livings.
For all of you joining us for the first time on Twitch, this is how Tom and I this is how 30-year-olds like to have fun. We just talk about the modern economy. Wait, where are you all going? Where are we? Oh, they've gone straight to Pickle Rick.
I think we were talking about at the time specifically how RuneScape was just propping up an entire country's economy
multiple
through those like Venezuela, that's right, through their microtransactions and people like trading items and all that sort of stuff. Like, and we talked about like the kind of things that like when we were kids, and you're like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the X, Y, and Z, and like where places you go. We wouldn't have even fathomed like, I'll be a social media manager back then, let alone I can just play video games on the internet in a hot tub, and that's my job. Like, awesome.
Here's the thing.
What a way to make a living. I think that's great.
Thing. I don't even see her playing video games. It really just seems to be about the girl in the hot tub writing names of people.
I believe when I saw her stream last week, prior to the Pickle Rick coming out, she was playing Pokemon Snap, which released last week.
Technically ticks the box. I mean, look, my segue that I was going to go for with bringing up Twitch was that if you are on Twitch and you're watching us right now, unfortunately, unless you somehow managed to work out a way to give us money, because this is a free podcast, George won't be taking his shirt off to dance for you. Instead,
much to everyone's chagrin is what you're saying.
Yeah. Instead, what we do is...
Oh, gosh, darn it. Oh, man. I was really hoping that he'd get the loose-fitting jumper off and really show off those male memories.
I'll tell you what, George. Next week we'll set up a little GoFundMe in the corner, or a little Patreon. Get the Patreon account link set up, and then we'll
set one up before. I could have it set up so it updates in real time with donations, and a little thing pops up.
Yeah, you won't have to because we will not get any donations. So. Like,
how big a donation? Because one thing I think this Twitch streamer did, I've forgotten her name. I feel we should be
are we talking about the Pickle Rick lady?
Yeah. Amaranth?
Amaranth.
There it is. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. But I thought one thing was she wrote someone's username on her forehead. Was the thing I noticed
for a special. George, that was like the top tier donation amount.
How big a donation would someone need to give to Unnatural Selection for you to write whatever their Twitch account name is, which will probably be full of expletives, across your face?
Yeah, maybe clip fingers or something like that with a Z.
Yeah.
I'd say, look, I'm going to shoot for the moon, Tom. I want to say $5 Australian. $5
Australian. You heard it here. Join us on Twitch, and we can make this happen.
I'm going to say
this space.
Is a whiteboard marker or a permanent marker? I should have asked first.
And can you write? You have to write, so because it's reversed, right? So
right, I have to do it in mirror writing.
Mirror writing.
You can tell your camera not to flip. You might have to get your wife to write it on your forehead unless you're able to write backwards. I mean, it's isn't it? But let's do this for $5 whole Australian dollars.
I regret this immediately.
You can make this happen. No, take backsies. Anyway, we are a newsy type stuff and things podcast rather than just trying to do crazy stunts involving George's face.
Sure.
And that was the segue that I was initially going for.
Hang on. Wait. I can show you my asshole instead. Does anyone want that?
No, that's not allowed on Twitch, George.
It's wrong.
That is
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans for that. Sorry, I'm just messing with cables because I need to plug my headphones in. Ignore me. Yes, we are a newsy type stuff and things podcast. So yeah, we will be talking about some news stuff. Adam.
We're talking about the economy before Venezuela, but the Australian economy is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So riveting stuff. Don't go anywhere, guys. Stay right here.
Where are they all going? It's so weird.
But before we get to the economy, we will talk about the COVID crisis in India and Australia's response to that. Now, I think did we mention it last week? I can't remember. We did mention it last week. That obviously Australia has, in response to the out of control sort of situation in India with the COVID cases and deaths, we've shut the border and thrown out the key, and anyone who tries to come back in, we're going to throw you in jail, basically. Throw
you in jail or fine you absurd amounts of money. Something they didn't do to all the other countries that had also similar out of control deaths and cases situation. Yes, it was hard to get flights and things like that, but there were still ways to try and get at minimum Australian citizens back home.
From certain
people have
certain countries, like you can't.
Oh yeah, well, and people have been stranded for a while. Like that's the thing. It's like that's by no means been perfect in every other country, but there wasn't just a straight up, we will throw you in jail. Yeah. We don't care about birth rights.
Well, it wasn't criminalized. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
but this is the thing is though, technically speaking. Like this is where this article from the ABC has revealed a few interesting points. Where it's not like it's an extra step that they went to criminalize it. Like technically speaking, some of the other distinctions they've made or determinations they've made about banning flights from certain countries, and I think Greg Hunt's made about 8 of them so far under Section 477 of the Biosecurity Act 2015. So if it's an offence for anyone to potentially come into Australia, that by the very nature of breaching that section of the Act has jail time associated with it.
Yeah, okay, but the distinction here is that these people who are currently in India have gone to India with the express permission of the government in order to do so, and they are citizens. We're not talking about just like people coming to Australia to have a holiday and stand on Collins Street looking upwards, blocking traffic. Like we're talking about people who are Australian citizens or dual citizens and things like that. These are people who have Australian passports and are being denied entry into Australia, which essentially makes them stateless. Like it is an implied right in the Constitution. Like what is the point of citizenship otherwise? Like other than at a minimum to give you access to your own country. Like what is the point of citizenship otherwise? So like it's not just a case of like, like we don't want people coming in from bad places. It's like we're not allowing Australians to come home. And it seems like it's because they're brown. They're brown Australians. And if they were Nordic Swedish citizens that were in Denmark and things are going wrong in Denmark, Australia would send over a fucking submarine and pick them up personally by hand. But because they're in India, the Australian government's gone, well, fuck it. And already there's been an Australian citizen who was not allowed to come back, who has died overseas of coronavirus. So it's like, I'd be very curious to see.
Do we know it was of coronavirus yet? I know I'm splitting hairs here, but the reporting that I'd seen was like they had been diagnosed with coronavirus and they have died, I think, for legal reasons.
That was my understanding from the reporting, but yeah, I don't know. I'd have to double check that. But yeah, that it's. I don't know. If in other situations, Australia has gone well and over and above to sort of get their citizens out of trouble, and it seems, and to bring them home and to repatriate them, and it seems like they're not doing that in this case. And their reversal, their stunning reversal, they're like more, and the mainstream media is so fucking shit. Okay, sorry, you go, and then I'll
let's get to the narrative of it, right? So we don't want to skip to the end. We've got to tell a story.
And another thing, these fucking pricks.
So, George, before you go on your rant, allow me to be devil's avocado for a minute, because you had nothing to rant about.
All I'm saying is that they announced this. Greg Hunt made this determination. A week or two ago, and it was out. There was a press release, right? And the press release was the first time that they've actually explicitly mentioned jail terms, which I think is what really got people's attention.
Sure.
Anyway, so then happened to be the week of publicity from hell for the government, where they were still throughout the week, there were like internal sections of the marketing department or whatever just being like, yeah, no, definitely, like most people, apparently there was advice being handed out that was saying that most people in Australia were cool with this. And
I don't know who most people are, but
I bloody hope they're not.
So they were sort of running with it. Scott Morrison sort of avoided the question, and then other ministers were kind of just like not really giving all the answers to it were vague, because obviously the whole concept of this is bullshit, right? Anyway, so by Friday, so a week later, week and a half maybe, they've started to walk back the determination.
Yeah, they did the thing where it's like, oh, we'll just do the Trump thing and like say that we're not sorry and just say the other side are a bunch of pricks and just like ignore the question. And then after about a week of that, they're like, oh, this isn't working. Everyone's getting real mad about this. And so
everyone's still pissed.
But their walk back was to say that, quote, government charter repatriation flights to the Center of National Resilience, which is what we're now calling our quarantine facility.
That's Howard Springs, right?
Yeah.
They're calling it. So Howard Springs, it's basically just a collection of tin sheds, which is a quarantine facility.
No.
And what did they call it?
It's a location for maximal excellence.
What's it actually called? The Center for what?
Center for National Resilience. Your
fucking Liberal Party, get a fucking logo,
get it in,
slap it on the front of it. This bad boy's had so many quarantines.
Have we got any labels left? Yeah. Any Liberal Party logos? It's all right. We'll just write them up. We'll just do our own. Fuck it. Just whack it. What is it? 10:30. Let's go lunch.
Well, it's not a Scott Morrison government policy or inaction without a snappy name. Gotta have a snappy name.
The government chartered repatriation flights to the Centre for Fucking Australia, fuck yeah, at Howard Springs for Australians returning from India will resume on May 15th, said the statement. Now, that's when they were always intended to resume. So this backpedaling, they're like, oh, the Morrison government's backpedaling. Yeah. And they're like, no, all they're doing is saying that the end date of May 15th is still May 15th, and then asking for a pat on the back for how good of a boy they've been for doing the thing that they said that they were going to do in the first place. It's like
classic having the bob each way. That's what they always do. They try to.
They love a bloody announcement. So it's like, all right, I'm getting slammed in the press for not allowing flights in from India. Let me announce that we'll be letting flights in from India after May 15th. But we're letting flights in from India. How good are we after May 15th? Like we're always planning to do.
Honestly, it's just like it's a government obvious. That honestly just keeps saying the quiet part loud. And I don't know, for whatever reason, the Australian public just like accepts them at their word. They're like, oh yeah, look, it was a shit bloke thing to do, but at least they're reversing it. It's like, no, there was always going to, it was always going to end. It was a 2-week period from the 1st of May to the 15th of May. It was going to be the case that they didn't let in Australian citizens in from India, and they just continued to do that. And they just did a shit thing for 2 weeks. And we shouldn't give them a pat on the head. When someone's punching you in the head, you don't give them a cookie for stopping punching you in the head. They're like, no, we're just going to keep doing the shit thing for another week.
Yeah. Especially when the punching you in the head ends at a designated time that the puncher decides.
Yes.
You don't give them the cookie then.
You're like blood coming out of your mouth, teeth coming out. And you're like, thank you, here's the cookie.
Yeah, you're not just like, I'm going to kick your ass for the entire of lunch period and then just get your ass kicked for the whole time and then give them a cookie for stopping at the end of lunch because they have class to get to.
Oh, thanks, sir. May I have another?
That was always the government's out, was that they said, oh, well, it's only a temporary provision, it's only going to be, we'll review it at May. And so they've just done exactly what they say they're going to. And for those hard right-wing, like sociopaths that are cool with that, it sort of makes them, it appeals to that crowd as well, because it makes them look like, they've been sort of
they stuck to their guns.
Conservative. Yeah.
But I don't see, this is the thing, is I don't think anyone was on board with this policy decision. It seems like it was just a fucking mistake. Like, I don't think anyone was at the wheel. And when they were like, oh, we just like accidentally mentioned jail terms this time, and everyone was upset. And they're like, whoa. We didn't mean this either. We had no fucking idea what was in that thing. Like, they're trying to act now like it was like, oh yeah, it was definitely policy. And it was based on health advice and blah, 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 blah. But like what's different about the situation?
They can't.
I literally think it was a fuck up in a press release. Yeah. And they've just had to spend the last week because like no one in their own government is supportive of this idea.
No.
When Matt Canavan, who is like conservative, like he is the conservative wet dream fucking coal humper, his fucking display picture on Twitter is him in a high-vis vest with a coal smeared face. Like this is the guy who's like the uber conservative guy. And
how have I missed that?
Yeah, go to Matt Canavan. Matt J. Can. on Twitter. Quote, we should be helping Aussies in India return, not jailing them. Let's fix our quarantine system rather than leave our fellow Australians stranded. And I hate to say this, but when I agree with Matt Canavan, you know you've done fucked up. There is something that, okay, maybe I think you said it to me best, Tom. Like
George, yeah. I've got to say, no, you say it.
No, well, it's like, it's not that I agree with Matt Canavan. It's that the Liberal Party is fucked up so bad that Matt Canavan agrees with me. Like, that is how far the universe is bad. We've distorted the space-time continuum to such an extent that Matt Canavan has come to my position on any matter.
And not just Matt Canavan, like half of Sky News have also done a flip as well, and like Andrew Bolt.
Andrew Bolt.
What's his name? Bald, crazy guy.
Alan Jones, not Joyce.
No, Joyce is the honest guy.
Jeanette Ulbrichtson from The Australian said, quote, if the Morrison government does not get rid of laws that criminalise Australian citizens for returning home, it will lose any semblance of being a Liberal government, let alone a moral one. It's so sad to see what has become of the federal Liberal Parliamentary Party. And I was just like, am I agreeing with Jeanette Ulbrichtson? Like, what is happening? What is happening? What's happening? Like,
I want to know.
And people were like on panels this week. Like Alan Jones had Tanya Plibersek on, and they were like, just like agreeing about how bad the Morrison government was. I was like, what fucking parallel universe have we stepped into? That what is happening? What's happening? What's happening though? What's happening?
The thing that kind of freaked me out was that, like, in terms of like this determination, they've used it for like the banning of cruise ships. It was to stop Australians going overseas. So, you know, how you want to go to that Bali trip for, you know, your Bucks party that was a couple of years, you know, that it never ended up happening because of COVID. Anyway, that, like stopping people doing that, that's what one of these determinations have been used for, to stop people going and visiting remote Indigenous communities. These determinations, the same piece of legislation is being flapped around for these kind of things. As you said, I would love to know whether or not, like, the marketing intern from, I'm not sure whether it's like someone from the department, from the health department that's done this, or whether it's like a consultancy firm that does the press releases for the health department that have put that. Either way, someone's ticked that off and gone,
It's literally just been like some intern at the health department has gone, Carol, can you put together this press release? She goes, blah, 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 as per the act, insofar as, such as, the utmost to. And, well, it's against the act, so I assume there must be some sort of penalty. We'll whack that in, obviously, fines. And then it's just gone out. Everyone's just, like, diligently reported on it. And now the government's shitting themselves because they're having to actually reckon with the ramifications of what that would actually mean. Like, the ever so slight constitutional crisis that invokes. Like,
and the scary thing is if, like, hypothetically, let's say, what was the lady's name that you said from marketing? Carol. Let's say Carol hadn't put the fact that there were jail terms associated with this. Let's say that didn't make it into the press release. Would any of this stuff, this reaction, have happened?
No, we'd be talking about Elon Musk on SNL talking about Dogecoin. That's what would be happening right now.
We should also talk about that. But the point being, I think this is like if that hadn't happened, we would be none the wiser. This would not be a news
we would
story.
have just quietly slipped into an autocracy. Like, it just would have been Brave New World.
That's the scary thing about this.
Big Brother is watching. Little ScoMo painted on the side of vans with, you know, big megaphones blaring out that ScoMo loves you. He's watching. Like, it would have just quietly become a police state without having realized it. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, citizenship means nothing. All right, cool.
So, but good to know that they're sort of walking back some of that language, and it looks like they're going to sort of at least have some repatriation flights that are going to come back. I mean, it won't be a case of getting the whole 9,000 that are stuck over there. It's not going to be, they're not all coming back at once, but a lot at least it gives perhaps an avenue to have some of the high risk people.
We're talking about repatriation flights, but a lot of these people went over there to India for humanitarian reasons, for funerals, for, birthdays for reasons that you would go and visit family overseas in this situation. Maybe someone's died of the coronavirus, and you need to be there to do things for them. And they did so with the express permission of the Australian government. So to let them go and then to slam the door behind them just seems like inherently monstrous to me. I don't know, if they were Italians, if they were Swedes, I just don't think it would be happening, man. I just don't think that if it was a bunch of French people, I just don't see it. If it was a bunch of Brits that went overseas and then all of a sudden things got worse and then they go, oh, we need to come home. And the Australian government's like, no, you said we got to come on now, be fair, die overseas. And they were quoting this statistic that's saying compared to people coming from America that were testing at a positivity rate of 6%, that the people coming home from India were testing positive at a rate of 40%. So we couldn't allow it, because it was too dangerous. And something that Jess Hall brought up the other night on Q&A, the talk show panel program, was that maybe that shows they really need our help. The fact that a lot of them are coming back testing positive means the situation over there is really fucked up and they need our help.
Very fucked. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just this way that we have about talking of people of color that it just seems to be unique to them and not to anyone else. And it's hard. I'm not one of these people that's everything's fucking racism. But in this particular situation, everything is fucking racism. It does seem to be the one situation where you are completely fucking justified and saying, what is the difference between these two different groups of people? And the obvious answer is we don't like them because they're brown. I don't know what else could you possibly attribute it to?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I feel it comes across as a thing of I think it's unlikely that it's someone doing the finger pyramid of evil contemplation scheming, being ha ha ha, fuck them. But whether it's a conscious or subconscious aggression of
bias.
Racial prejudice
and
bias or not, it's still very clear. It's what are the difference between these two things? India isn't the only country that has had catastrophic situations with COVID.
I don't remember hearing any stories like this when the Brits were going through their, massive wave of coronavirus. And, I didn't hear any of these kind of stories. I don't know. It could be selection bias. It could be, confirmation bias on my part. But it really does seem like the thing that distinguishes, as you say, I don't think it's overt racist. Don't get me wrong. Scott Morrison loves a curry, right? But I don't think that if you talk to these people and said, do you hate Indian people, Mr. Prime Minister? He'd go, yeah, fucking Indians, fucking hate them. But there is clearly some sort of, they are considered, there are certain communities that are just considered lesser than or more expendable than others. And I don't think you can put it down to, I don't know. I'm trying to be charitable. I'm trying to find the other interpretation of what this could possibly fucking be. And I'm just it's just they don't care about brown people as much. It really is just as simple as that. The thing that you think it is that thing. It is that bad. Anyway.
Sometimes the simplest explanation is the correct one.
I'm just having a quick look at Australia's travel restrictions at the moment. So India is obviously listed as having a ban.
Yeah, now.
Individuals seeking an exception, seeking, because basically this is the other article that we've got here, is that Scott Morrison this week basically said that international travel for holidays or whatever else won't resume to at least 2022. So at the moment, individuals seeking exceptional circumstances exemption to travel from Australia to these high-risk COVID-19 countries will only be approved for the following very limited circumstances. So critical workers, something to do with the national interest of Australia, urgent medical treatment.
Will we let them come back, though?
I think that's to do with India, actually, they're talking about there. But basically, there's New Zealand, which is different. Papua New Guinea's got its own section here. But yeah, if you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident, you cannot leave Australia due to COVID-19 restrictions unless you have an exemption. Okay, so there you go. So point being is you can't leave anyway to have an exemption. But the exemptions are You can apply online, but you must meet one of the following. Your travel is part of the response to the COVID-19 outbreak. Your travel is for your business or employer. You're traveling to receive urgent medical treatment that you can't get in Australia. You're traveling outside of Australia for a compelling reason, whatever that means, for 3 months or longer. You are traveling
a reason that
on
makes you
compassionate
go,
grounds.
that is compelling. Before
That
you had
is
my
compelling.
interest, but now you have my attention.
Now I am
Yeah,
compelled.
a reason that is quite a page turner.
You can travel on compassionate or humanitarian grounds, or if your travel is in the national interest, you secret aids.
Yeah, so really, you can travel for any reason that isn't.
Well, you've got to apply for an
holiday.
exemption. But yes, basically.
But like, all the exemptions are anything that isn't a holiday, which is what a lot of these people went over there to do.
They had the exemptions.
To take care of family and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, to George's point,
already there.
When you let them come back is the major issue here. So it's turbo fuck.
So we're not going anywhere very soon for Australia. We're stuck on the island. But look, just explore your own backyard. Go to tropical North Queensland. Go and
we are in the very lucky position of where travel around Australia, but also that just life is getting a bit more back to normal. We're very lucky to be in that position. I mean, I know Sydney looked a bit touch and go for a second there this week, but thankfully, actually, they're not showing a huge spike in cases, so I think they've dodged a bullet.
Well, is that because no one's getting tested, though? Like, how do they even know that?
I think lots of
Blob, like Joe Blob, that's a real name.
Joe Blob needed a barbecue.
It's actually Joseph Blob.
Joseph, sorry.
Right, he prefers to go by his full name.
Yeah. If he's just picking it up randomly, in a Sydney.
That's the interesting part about the Sydney situation. So, for any of you who are unaware of what happened, so a locally acquired case of coronavirus popped up in Sydney after there'd been sort of a fair while without one, much like we have here in Victoria. We just haven't had new cases outside of quarantine zones where we know that there would be people who are infected. Just this guy who spent a whole Saturday looking for a barbecue and then on the Sunday went to a butcher, presumably to crack out the new barbecue.
To cook some meat.
So he did find the barbecue he was after, one would assume.
Oh, that's a relief.
Barbecue's cool.
I think to a few of them.
He went to 5 different barbecue places.
Yeah. Someone crunched the numbers by putting the addresses into Google Maps in the order that they come up based on the time thing, and they think he did a solid 2 to 3 hours worth of barbecue driving.
It's a lot of barbecue driving.
On his Saturday. Like, that's pretty wild.
Who are these people? Who are these people that are going out and doing stuff? They're like, they've somehow been exposed to coronavirus, and they're just like, I'm just going to hit up 17 cafes, a bunch of barbecue places, and just breathe on some old people. Like, I've never done so much stuff in the entire period of this coronavirus pandemic than this guy's done in one Saturday.
George.
He's visited more barbecue places in one afternoon than I've visited in my entire life. I've been alive for 30 years, Tom. And I've
Do you have a barbecue, George?
I have one barbecue. I ordered it online. I never set foot in a barbecue store.
Just because you can order if you wanted a fancy new Weber, you could just get it online. But anyway, so that happened. And the interesting thing was there was a locally acquired case. And so that meant, how did he get it? Could have been community transmission. So that led to a lot of, worries of what kind of restrictions would come in. Some restrictions did. But those restrictions have been extended for another week, they announced. So even though they're showing 0 new cases each day, the tricky part is that they genome sequenced genome tracked the coronavirus within him, and it matched someone who was currently in quarantine who'd come from the United States, but they don't know how these two people cross paths.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any close contact together.
They've got the guy in quarantine.
At least one other person in the middle who could have passed it or passed it to someone else, and it's gone around like that. So somehow it got out, and they don't know how.
You've got the guy in quarantine. You've got the guy who showed up with the test result, but it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 10, it could be 50 people in between them. That indicates that there's a chain of transmission between all of these people.
Yeah. So hopefully we're not about to see a huge spike in cases in Sydney. Because I mean, while we've had a few days of 0 cases, we know there's an incubation period, there's all the people who are infected passing it on. Exactly, for another week and a half till we know that, okay, we're good. But yeah, it's just scary to sort of see, we can't connect these 2 people yet, but they definitely have the same disease from each other, right? So yeah, that's a big deal. But other than that, life's pretty normal, kind of around Australia at the moment. I went to a cafe for brunch today, and I didn't even have a mask with me because they're not mandated in most places anymore. But I was like, I don't even have one in the car. Holy cow, I haven't done this in a long time. I think not since I was in Canberra for Christmas, where there were no mask rules at all. And a lot of the talk about the Morrison government has been their sort of, these comments that we mentioned earlier, where he said that Australia will remain shut off indefinitely. There's the remarks that was sort of taken slightly out of context, according to Scott Morrison. But the general thrust of it is true, is the Morrison government has realised that the Australian public, unlike what he said 3 weeks ago, do not have an appetite to handle about 1,000 coronavirus cases a week in order to get back to normal. They've realized the appetite of the Australian public is for 0 fucking risk whatsoever. We are happy not to get students back from China in order to live a more or less completely normal life with no coronavirus spread. We want 0 cases.
Don't get me started on the international students thing.
No, I'm just using that as an example. But there are places that we could be getting people and tourists and other kind of people through in order to, try and, get business pumping again. But it's the federal government has finally realized the Australian public politically overwhelmingly want an elimination strategy where we don't have any coronavirus floating around and we can live our normal lives. And if that means certain areas of the, certain areas of the economy suffer, then so be it. The government should be extending support to tourism and accommodation, and it should just be something you sort, you the government, and we can just live our normal lives. We've got a friend of the show, Alana, writing in. I can't even imagine it. I assume she's referring to what it must be like, sort of walking around without masks and things being relatively normal.
Being over in the UK right now.
Yeah. And she's a friend of ours who's moved over there, last year or whenever it was, and obviously it sucks. We massively feel for you, Lana.
I mean, even when we were in our 100 days of turbo strict lockdown, I think it's still not it's still not the same, because even on those sort of brief times when I could be out of the house or even going to the supermarket with my mask and all that sort of stuff, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't feel even the overwhelming fear of I could catch this any second. I still felt
there were about 10 cases in my suburb or something like that.
It's I know I'm doing the right thing. So it was for other people, but I never felt at risk, even in that turbo lockdown. It was more just the psychological, depressive aspects of it. But from conversations I've had with Alana and with other people overseas, it sounds terrifying. When you're getting tens of thousands of cases a day or deaths and things like that. So I think while even we talk about Melbourne's, Victoria's unique experience that no one else will understand, it's they've got one that's worse.
With all of that said, there's nothing that's changed about the Australian situation fundamentally in terms of people who are susceptible to the virus. It's not like we've had a bunch of people that have contracted it and burned through and there's some sort of herd immunity. We've only had 2.5 million Australians vaccinated at this stage, which is less than 10% of the population. If this were to get out tomorrow, we could be within 2, 3, 5 weeks. We could be right back where we started. There's nothing about the Australian situation which is why I'm so, I don't know about you guys, but I saw some footage this morning on ABC 24, which was talking about some rugby match that had happened recently. It was a big nail biting match, and they showed some footage, and there was 15,000 people in the crowd, And I immediately felt like anxiety. Like, I was just like, oh my God, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we doing? I feel like we should still be wearing masks in supermarkets and things like that.
75,000 people.
Oh
at the
my
MCG.
God, what the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you guys? And people talk like it's post-pandemic.
George, how good are the Tigers, though? How good are they?
People talk like, but yeah, back then when the pandemic was happening, I'm like, bro, the pandemic is still happening. It's just not happening right now.
Yeah.
Like at this exact moment in time, it's not happening here. But we are still in the midst of a pandemic, which is why I find it funny that so many workplaces are trying to get people back into the office. I'm like, why? Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed about this situation. That means we couldn't be back in a lockdown in fucking 2 weeks. We had a snap lockdown. What was it, a couple months ago? For like
February.
So I was like 8 weeks ago. And we're like, no, we're good though. We should all definitely come back to the CBD and have long commutes and, all that sort of shit. Like that's definitely something that's back on the menu.
Breathing on people. It's real fun.
Oh yeah, I love like breathing in everybody's stuff on the train. It's great.
Oh my God.
But don't worry, the hotel quarantine system is 99.95% effective.
Yeah, is that it's as effective as Ajax spray and wipe.
Adam, where'd you get that stat from?
I'm pretty sure Scott Morrison had said something
from the font. The font of all truth and knowledge, Scott Ignatius Morrison, blessed be his name. Do you guys walk into shopping centers and things like that and feel, or shopping supermarkets and things like that and feel nervous that you're not wearing a mask? That's something I'm experiencing where it's like, I'm in the shop, I'm inside, this feels weird. And it just feels, it feels like such an easy thing to like have a mask indoors when you're around other people.
That was me like 3 months ago, bro. Like you're like on a different level than everyone else, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think my experience sort of going into places like that. Yeah, I remember at first, like as soon as they kind of were like, "Oh, you don't need masks." Yeah, I felt a little bit weird. But now I find less the mask, like the being maskless hasn't sort of changed my behavior or like sort of my concern in those environments. Hutching things, I feel has definitely changed. I'm a bit more conscious of like if I'm in a shop, it's like. Don't like touch a product that you don't absolutely feel you have to.
Yeah, I'm just gonna finger bang this avocado real quick.
Pick up like anything just to kind of have a look. I don't really do that anymore. Kind of because I'm conscious of like someone else could have been doing exactly what I'm about to do, but B, then I don't want to touch something that I'm also not going to take with me because then I'm leaving it for someone else. Like I've noticed that kind of behavioral change.
What about?
I wash my hands lots and lots.
Oh yeah, and like doing all the sanitizing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, of course.
Or
but yeah, I just noticed
picking my nose and just like fucking.
No.
Yeah. Adam, I've seen Adam just fingering his own asshole in stores before. Like before all this, it was quite a time.
Go with that, sure.
No. Yeah, sorry. Was I confident?
It's better that he fingers his own asshole rather than someone else's.
Someone else's, then you've got two issues.
It's itchy, right? Yeah, so you can't help it anyway.
How do you guys feel about the whole sort of return to work situation? Like everyone I've spoken to seems really keen on having at least a couple of days a week from home. Some workplaces seem to be really pushing back and saying, no, we absolutely need you in 5 days a week. Other places are being more flexible. What's your sort of experience been with all of that?
We're back a couple of days in the office a week. We were back, it was a week, last month where we were there 5 days a week just to get some targets sort of hit out and to collaborate, which did work, to be fair. But, I think generally our business is pretty cool that we're, a couple of days in the office, a couple of days at home and all good.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. Like, a few days sort of in there of the week. But yeah, I feel very lucky in that my work doesn't seem to be like gunning for, we want everybody 5 days a week in there. It's kind of like, hey, we have actually seen that we can operate remotely like this. So we were often being asked of like, what kind of flexible working arrangements would you like? And like, my team leader has said things like, oh, I'd like maybe one day of the week where we're all here and we can have our meeting, but it's not like I need everybody here because you all work better. It's like, oh, no, like we work from home. Do you have a setup at home where you feel you can do your job well? Great. Let's work with you. Try to make sure that some of us are in the office, like maybe like at least someone's in the office every day, and we kind of like rotate it a little bit. But like, so it's been good like that. No one's really been like gun ho. We need everybody back in the office. Like, the Rona be damned. It's kind of like, no, we know you can do your jobs at home, and we are okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's I have heard stories of places sort of pushing back and being unreasonable and things like that. And I think there's going to be a lot of convulsions in the workplace over the next sort of 6 to 12 months where people are being sort of forced to come back, and some people are actually just realizing like, I'm actually not okay with that. Being in 5 days a week. The literature is pretty clear from the business literature pre-pandemic. The majority of people want to spend some period of time working from home. Almost nobody wants to be completely remote all of the time. And almost nobody wants to be in the office full time. Most people, the vast majority of people, want some sort of hybrid working situation where they're in the office some of the time and at home some of the time. I think it's important to have like team days and things like that where you can all sort of get around it like on a Friday or something we know everyone's going to be in and we can have the meeting. But I don't know. I'm just curious because like this is going to be a conversation that's increasingly important over the next sort of 6 to 12 months as hopefully the pandemic recedes into the distance. Is like, okay, well, what is actually going to stick and what's actually going to change permanently in the workplace as a result of this? And I hope it is an acceptance that some sort of hybrid working from home situation is not only accepted but actually preferable for most people. And like allows you to live in,
Well, if you live in, Geelong, it's,
right.
the less you have to spend on a train.
If you don't have to commute into Melbourne to do your job and all that sort of stuff.
I think a lot of people have just like realized that like, I don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. We did this fine with me working completely remote. So maybe I can just be in 2 days, 3 days a week, and that's fine. And it works.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be flexible on this, I might just go find a place that is flexible on this. Like, it is too hard to get up and schlep, an hour each way, 5 days a week. Like, and then you got to rush home, and then you got to you get home at 7, and you got to like immediately get the food on, and then you watch like 2 episodes of The Office and have like 2 glasses of wine, and then like go to sleep, and then like rinse and repeat, and that's your entire life. Like, most people are unwilling for that to be, the case forever. And they've only just now started to realize that. I say people, I mean, me.
Yes, you. Well, I guess, George, that instance of that leverage that you mentioned there of, if you're not flexible on this, I'll just find a job that is.
That is, because they're out there and they're advertising. Like,
well, yeah, I guess that'll rely on there being so many jobs for everybody to get after things change, which is what the budget this week, Hope.
Yeah, the budget.
It's budget week, everybody. Everybody loves budget week, where we see how much the poor are gonna be shattered.
We should have a budget drinking game because that's how interesting we are.
Yeah.
I feel the budget drinking game is just drink.
Yes, that is the game. You watch the budget, and you
feel less sad.
Yeah, that's the game, and it's a game I play every night, regardless of whether the budget's on or not.
So there's always a budget being announced in George's mind.
So the government's been we said this last week, but the government's basically like, as we said, they love announceables. And they've basically been leading up to this budget, kind of like it's the lead up to the next Mission Impossible movie or something.
I was going to say, it reminds me...
dropping teasers, dropping out some fucking announceables.
It reminds me of like teaser trailers for the next Marvel movie where they like give the whole film away over a series of like 10 trailers. So to the point where you get to the movie and you go, great. And you go, I've seen all of this. I've seen all of this in the trailers. Like they've got a bunch of like pre-announceables as to like what's going to be in the budget. And I'm like, if you're just pre-announcing the thing that's going to be in the budget,
Just announce it.
Isn't that the announcement?
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like, and I thought when I was seeing like, tidbits coming up of like, that it looks like the budget's going to involve an announcement on this or an announcement on that. It was all like, are these leaks coming out of the Treasury or whatever? It's like, no. Josh Frydenberg just sat down with the ABC and was like, here's the budget. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, but like, you don't get closer to the horse's mouth than the horse literally speaking.
Okay, so say you're Laura Tingle and you're asking me, Josh Frydenberg, about what's going to be in the budget. Please go ahead.
Now, Mr. Frydenberg, we know that you're usually pretty tight-lipped on the budget announcements ahead of time, but can you give us an indication of what kinds of policies you're looking to get us out of this coronavirus induced recession?
Yeah, no, look, it's a good question, Laura, and Money Machine go brrr.
Could you elaborate on that?
The Money Machine go brrr.
Okay, yes. How many R's is that?
That's 12 R's.
12 R's. All right, excellent. Because I worked with someone where it was 14 R's, and we got that wrong. I had to do a retraction and everything. The press council got involved.
12 R's over the forward estimates.
Check. So anyway, a few little things have come up. I suppose we can go into maybe, because I know, George, you've got an article here about how maybe these things are all estimated on some dodgy assumptions. But we had a bit of a conversation prior to the show, Adam, while we were waiting for you to hop on. George and I had a lovely discussion about housing. Because we're in our 30s now, and that's in our 20s it was Batman, in our 30s it is housing.
And how much housing Batman was able to afford as a billionaire?
So much, and he could have made so much housing for all those poor people who turned to crime.
Why
in the Joker's
didn't
gang.
he just spend his billions of dollars fixing these problems rather than punching lady? Like,
doesn't make a good comic book, John.
I know.
This is like in the future where it's like, if you want Calculon to rush off to the special effects warehouse with the huge gunfight, press 1, and if you want him to double check his paperwork, press 2, and everyone ends up with 2, and the movie is him just doing accounting. That is what Batman comics would be like. If it was like, no, Batman was more socially responsible, there'd be no fun Joker things, there'd be no cool gadgets, it'd just be him being like, all right, I'm at a board meeting, spend this much doing blah. Roll credits.
All right, Mr. Fox, but how do we make this tank fly? Mr. Wayne, shouldn't you maybe just fund some inner city schools? No,
Yeah.
We need to make the tank fly. Trust me on this.
No, I'm thinking more like, no, this is an amazing initiative for the inner city school. We're going to fund these programs, those programs. There's some good lots of spending into dealing with the homelessness crisis in Gotham. And any questions, Mr. Wayne? Do these policies come in black? They'll be like, is he serious? All the consultants will be like, what?
I don't know.
Is he serious? Anyway.
We could put the debt relief plan in black and then put the type in white, I guess. Is that...
I mean, yeah, that's a huge waste of printer ink, because it's probably really bad for the environment. But I guess we've already killed the trees to make the paper, so
it's fine. He's giving us He's giving us $30 billion to do. Which I say we say yes. Yeah. We just say yes. Yes, it does come in black.
Yes, yeah. We can waste printer ink when you're being funded by bloody Bruce Wayne.
Friend of the show who's clearly been listening for many years, long-time listener, first-time caller, 33 Poker 33 says, if the Ice Age is a real thing, then why didn't everything, including, quote, natural processes, unquote, stop indefinitely? I think he may just be responding to the name of the show, Unnatural Selection, and that's it. But it's a good question, 33 Poker 33. Who knows? Google is your friend.
Anyway, the housing thing, one of the things that they announced, I feel it's something, because they love an announcement, right? It's one of those things that the announcement sounds great. If you just hear the announcement, you'll be like, that sounds good. I like that. Then if you think about it a little more, you'll go, wait a minute, that's bad. So the thing they announced was that single parents Although the messaging that I was sort of seeing kind of seemed very gendered towards single mothers, which I was like, it feels like a neg a little bit there, but I don't know, it seems a bit silly. But they were just like, single parent could be eligible for applying for home loans at 2%. So a 2% home loan
Deposit.
Yeah. So really cheap housing deposits. So at first you're like, oh, don't have to save up as much for a deposit. That's good. But then if you think about it a little longer, the houses aren't any cheaper.
No.
So I can more easily get myself $1 million in debt.
So what that would mean is if you were trying to get a home that cost you $1 million, you would only have to stump up $20,000 in deposit. So if the value of your house fluctuated more than $20,000 in any given year, and you had to sell it for any given reason, and it's dumb. It's a bad policy for a number of reasons.
It's essentially like it is allowing, like, you know, it just seems to be a policy of let people more easily get into debt.
Hey guys, have you heard about this fantastic bubble over here? Do you guys want to get in on this fucking housing bubble over here? You guys should jump in this housing bubble for like not very much money and be on the hook for $1 million. You guys want to get in on this or what?
So the reason why they're doing this is because
there's this other cool investment called Dogecoin. You should get in on fucking Doge as well, says the Australian government.
Yeah.
It just goes up. It only goes up, mate. You can't lose. You can't lose. Look at it. It's got like a hockey stick.
Oh, yeah. Doge to the moon, mate.
Doge is going to the moon, as is Australian housing stock, and it's definitely sustainable forever. Authorised by the Commonwealth Government Canberra.
So, apparently, this is a stat I heard probably a couple of years ago, but 1 in 3 jobs are connected in some way to the property sector in Australia.
Cool. Cool country.
The government knows that if construction and property sales in general are going well, then state governments are getting stamp duty revenue, and it's also, you know, through trickle down economics that there are trades employed, suppliers are, you know, it has a net good effect on the economy if people are buying and selling.
If there is an asset that keeps going up and up and up in value, everyone who owns a piece of that asset will get rich forever. And it's the people that are paying into the system that will have to bear the brunt of the costs in order for other people to get rich. Alfred Ponzi came up with a very similar idea. And it was known thereafter as a Ponzi scheme.
And I was going to say, idea is generous. I believe scheme.
Yes.
The problem is, and the thing is, like, when COVID hit, the construction sector was devastated. Like, there were lots of people that were made redundant. A lot of things went on pause. And the only reason why I was able to recover and stay stable was because state and federal government started the home builder scheme where you can get, you know, there was like a government grant for large renovations or construction.
You had your job seeker, you had your job keeper, you had your job trainer, you had your house builder. They're just calling the policies the things that they are now, which is good for consumers, so they can see it and you go, this is the tax rorter, this is the people fucker, this is, it's good for transparency. So you actually got the name of the thing on the tin of the thing, which is nice. So the thing is with these, and there's been lots of lobbying as well throughout, you know, large scale construction firms and other property industry peak bodies. They've been lobbying state and federal governments to try and keep the cash coming, basically. Because what I think they're worried about now is that once home builder peters off, and because net immigration is down, that eventually demand will soften in the local housing market. But that's what they're seeing in, say, 6 to 12 months. The problem is that right now we have a bubble worse than the pre-pandemic. Before the last election, the bubble is worse now than what it was then. And everyone knows the way to solve the problem of having a bubble is just keep pumping that bubble, man. It's going to keep inflating forever, bro. There's no possible way. You can't lose. The thing is, you can't fucking lose, mate. You just got to keep pumping the bubble 100%.
And on one side of it, you've got people like us going, well, how are we ever going to be able to afford to buy a home?
Doesn't matter. Fuck you. That's my name. Always be closing. Coffee is for closers, mate.
So in the budget, they then announce schemes where you can have a reduced deposit for for a house, or you can do,
But all
whatever
that
else.
allows is
But
for you
it
to
just
afford larger
accentuates
and
the problem.
more expensive homes, which is exactly the problem. Before the 2008 financial crisis in America, the whole problem was that there was essentially a moral hazard in that the banks would loan any amount of money to anyone to buy inflated asset prices, and people were getting shoveled into loans that they couldn't afford. And then the situation came along where all of a sudden, housing prices dropped. And if you've got a deposit of 20% and your house drops by 20% in value, you can afford to absorb the damage there. If you have to sell, you sell a foreclosed house. Yeah, you'll take a hit. It'll fucking suck, but you won't be underwater. The problem with the American situation was a bunch of people had their houses foreclosed on and their loans were underwater, which means their house had been foreclosed on. It was only worth $500,000, but they bought it for $800,000. And now they are homeless and also owe the bank $300,000. So the smaller your deposit is, the more likely something is to happen in that regard. Like, the more danger you are in, the more risk you've absorbed. Because if you have a 2% deposit on a $1 million home, at 20%, a fluctuation of 2% in the value of a $1 million home would occur fucking daily. Like, these are fluctuations in value that occur all the time. The idea that a single parent could be left holding the bag for like tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's a distressed asset and they need to sell their home for whatever reason is like morally unconscionable. It is a fucking debt trap. It is worse than credit cards in terms of what this could do to fucking ruin people. Like,
the problem, it's probably not so much it depends. I mean, the reason my house value started to tank a bit was prior to the pandemic was to do with the Royal Commission, partly. There was a bit of fear around some of Labor's policies from certain sectors of the sector, but certain areas of the construction sector were worried about what that would do.
Labor's policies, by the way, which was to like get like very modestly phase out negative gearing over a period of years, which would mean people that are losing money on assets, on investments that aren't good assets, couldn't then reclaim the loss back on tax. Like, these are like quite modest proposals that were being put in place.
The problem at the moment is that, yes, there's a bubble and it's a gravy train where everyone's going, if you don't get on it now, you won't be able to get on it. So it is like Dogecoin.
Mate, I've got some fucking tulips for you over here. Do you want to pay $450,000 for a bunch of fucking tulips? Have you read any history whatsoever? Great, mate. I got a fucking bunch of tulips for you. Best fucking tulips you'll ever see. Can't lose. Can't lose money, mate. Can't lose.
But the thing that's really kickstarted all this is the supply and demand equilibrium. So everyone in the pandemic was locked down in their tiny apartments and they worked out that sucked. And so everyone now wants to buy freestanding dwellings. Like, the demand is insane. The demand is people that would have previously spent their $50,000 on a Kentucky tour to Italy and maybe living overseas for 12 months, they're starting to buy up. So while you haven't necessarily got immigration, people immigrating, settling down, and whatever else, you've got people that have returned to Australia who are citizens who have got the right to buy property, and they're doing so in large numbers.
They're allowed to return to the country.
Provided they're allowed to return. So the other thing is, like, the demand's gone up, the supply stayed the same, and now you've got a runaway increase. So look, I'm sure there are, and at the same time, apartment construction has softened a bit. So people are wanting a different kind of product now.
People are wanting freestanding houses. They're wanting to go further out from the CBD to live in the suburbs or maybe even the exurbs, like where it's a bit more,
regional areas.
Regional, the demand for those properties has skyrocketed. And like, it makes sense given the circumstances. The thing that I think we're not taking into account is, like, there's so many reasons that this is a bad policy. Like, pouring more fuel on the fire of what is essentially a bubble, like, doesn't help anyone. And the reason the government's announced this policy, this 2% policy, is because it doesn't cost them anything. Like, they're going to have to underwrite a bit of risk. Like, they'll say, we'll take responsibility if it goes sort of belly up in a couple of circumstances. But like, it doesn't make the house more affordable. You as a single mum or single dad are still borrowing $800,000, $1 million to buy a house. It doesn't make it. It's not like we're building more affordable housing for people. Here's some government funded housing. Here's a way that, the government's going to give you some money in order to help you enter the market. It's just adding fuel to the fire of this already raging fucking bubble. Mm-hmm. And like whilst doing nothing to address the supply side of the equation. It's just like, oh, you want some demand? Here's some more fucking demand. So on paper, you look rich. The price of your asset has gone up. So you look rich, you feel rich. Maybe you'll spend some more money because you feel so rich. But like nothing in the real world has actually changed. All a mortgage in essence is allowing more people to enter the market by borrowing from the future. And one wonders, if we lived in a world without mortgages, what would the housing price be? People in the mortgage industry talk about we're helping people achieve their dreams and buy their houses of their dreams and all this sort of stuff. But like, if we just lived in a world without all of this free-flowing credit, which is inevitably going to end up in a boom and bust cycle, what would a house actually cost? If you had to buy it out of pocket, like what could a house cost? 300 grand? 400 grand? Like, you're probably you're not even talking about a situation where people are being assisted. All the credit serves to do in this situation and in many other situations as well is to pump up the on-paper value, quote-unquote value of this asset so a bunch of suburban mums can feel rich. But the fact is, you're no richer than you were when you started. The number on your house has gone up. Because even if you buy a house, okay, say you sell your house and you got $1 million. You go, man, I'm so fucking rich, I got $1 million. If a house costs you $1 million, you got to turn, every time you sell, you have to buy. There's two people on the end of every transaction. So like, yeah, great, you're so fucking rich. You sold your house, you made a big profit. But like, if you have to turn around and buy another house, which also cost $1 million, like
more probably by that point,
right? Like by the time you sell it, it's not as though you've quote made money on that whole situation. It just seems like this whole sort of circular economy of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and we're calling this growth. And then we'll just add some more lemmings to the fucking market, and like hopefully it'll go great. Like it just seems like so.
Yeah, but look,
just so
at
painfully,
this point,
obviously wrong. Like
at this point, like the institutions are so well ingrained that it's hard to change.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not a bad idea. Like
the stat that our CEO was throwing around the other day was that, and it was to do with immigration, was that it takes when someone's immigrated, it takes them sort of, I think it was like 2 to 4 years to become settled to then enter the market. So if you say that immigration stopped a year ago, in about a year or 6 months from now, you're going to have a gap in the market effectively. But I don't necessarily think that's the case, because there are people here, as we said before, taking the place of that who would have been wanted to live in New York or something, and now they're here and they may as well buy a house. So I don't know. I think that unfortunately the system we've got is broken, but there's no real way to fix it because it's all just so well entrenched. And we had the Royal Commission that went some way to fixing it, but half of those things have been wound back because we need to stimulate the economy. We were going to talk about.
I don't know why.
But
I don't. Well, I think this sort of ties into all of that, because you've got a situation where I recently, not to brag, I got a raise from my current workplace, and it was a pretty substantial raise. It was around 8%, and I was like, oh, that seems like a lot, and I realized like that was the first time in my professional career I've ever received a raise. Like, and I was like, why is that? I was speaking to someone else at work, and they said like, well, for this particular role, like normally, you've got people coming into the country that can fill these roles, and those people just aren't coming in. So they've just got to deal with the existing talent pool that's available. And that is a finite amount of people here in Australia. You don't have people coming in from overseas to fill these roles. So the demand has stayed more or less the same, but the supply of labor has just dropped. And so all of a sudden that labor is worth more than it was before. So for similar roles in my industry, they're going for a lot more than they have previously. And it's like, oh, this is what wage growth looks like. And it's like, this is something that we've sort of been robbed of during our, like us as millennials, as people in our early 30s. We haven't had this our entire professional lives. I
used to get pay rises with CPI, but that was when I was working
CPI is what, 2-3%? Like it is a situation where I started
at $23 an hour in 2012, and I ended up at about 30 by the time I got to sort of 20. When did I leave? 2018.
Yeah. Okay. So like modest increases. I only ever got an increase when I changed jobs. I went from this job to that job. That job paid a higher salary, so I got a higher salary over here. I went from that job to that job, it had a higher salary. Like I went from that job to this job, that had a lower salary. I got fucked. But like, it's never occurred to me that we can actually be, because it's so foreign to us over the last 10 years during our entire working life, there hasn't been a situation where we're actually getting proper wage growth. And if you don't have proper wage growth, how are people supposed to get into housing and do all of these things?
That's the thing where I think you'll find, and just to segue all this and wrap it up into a nice little fucking bow with the announceables. And I think we mentioned this last week as well, but Frydenberg wants the unemployment rate with a 4 in front of it because apparently that's going to hit, increase wage growth. Contrary to all previous models and expectations, all of a sudden they've cottoned on that wage growth sucks. They need to do something about it.
Yeah, of a sudden, because it now suits them. It's very interesting, this very Keynesian sort of like lefty turn the government has taken here when it comes to deficit and policy and spending and all this sort of stuff. This liberal, conservative centre-right government all of a sudden has become, sort of Labour light, which I didn't fucking ever see coming. But yeah, all of these assumptions that are factored into the budget, getting the unemployment rate down, boosting the wages, and that's going to have these positive effects on growth. All of that is predicated on a bunch of assumptions which don't seem to be true. So the headline of this article from the ABC is, the federal budget forecasts have relied on dodgy assumptions for years. And basically what it talks about is, like in all the budget documents, it goes, we're going to count on wage growth of 3 to 4% and everything's going to be fucking fantastic. And when you look at what actual wage growth has been like for you, me, and Tom's professional careers, it's been substantially less than that. So since
2012, it's been shit.
Yeah, since 2012, it's been less than 3%. It's been like 1 to 2% wage growth. The majority of the time in those years, all their budget documents and all their finance documents over here saying, yeah, we're projecting a bunch of wage growth. It's going to be great. Doge is going to the moon. Everything's going fantastic. But meanwhile, what the actual trends are looking like are pretty fucking shit. So especially, September 19 to 20, where it dropped from like 2% down to, just around 1, closer to 1%. So,
well, it's going to make for an interesting budget this week.
Budget.
I just find it so funny that the federal government can go, like, when it suits them, they'll say, yeah, wage growth will be fucking fantastic. And when it doesn't suit them.
To be fair, those projections and assumptions came from the Treasury Department. So as to how closely you can tie that to the government, I'm not sure. But what are they all looking at? I mean, they must all be looking at similar sets of data and statistics and things like that. What it says to me. This article.
Sorry, go on.
Well, the thing that this article gets at is that all these assumptions are predicated on the concept of unemployment, meaning that's the unemployment rate, right? But it doesn't look at things such as underemployment. We mentioned this last week as well. So when you start with the concept of a casualised workforce, so after the Liberal government basically, increased casualisation and the gig economy, all that stuff has completely fucked the normal modelling, if you will, the normal equilibrium that exists between the unemployment rate and the economy.
Yeah.
So the models we have don't work anymore.
There was no Uber Eats in 2006. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah. So we're in a situation now where the way that we forecast is going to need to be different because the nature of work has changed.
It's not just that. It seems like, and there's an economics professor that backs up this point of view. Ross Garneau says Australia basically voluntarily keeps hundreds of thousands of people unemployed as a buffer for inflation, because the government could actually push the create policy that would push the unemployment rate lower, right? And if the unemployment rate is low, what they call full employment, what this guy argues is probably closer to 3.5%. Like there's this artificial bottom where they go, this is full employment. We can't push the unemployment rate any lower. But he reckons that it could actually be much lower than it is before it actually starts impacting wage growth. So basically what he's saying is the Australian government chooses to have hundreds of thousands of people unemployed in order to make sure that wage growth doesn't spike too high and to make sure that there isn't inflation. Like there is just a permanent underclass of people, of a couple of 100,000 people that we choose to keep poor because it benefits us as a society.
That's the connotation that they're drawing. I don't understand.
Okay, well, he's an economics professor and I'm a fucking moron. So I'm going to choose this guy's opinion over my... Look at him. There's a picture of him. He's leaning on a tree stump and staring into the middle distance with a very, very modest blazer. So I'm going to choose this guy's opinion over mine. But it stands to reason. Like, we think that the unemployment rate should sort of max out at 4.5%. But like, why given all the things that have changed in the economy, why couldn't it be lower? Why couldn't it be 3.9% or 3.5%? Like we've all just decided on this magic number that it's like a magic 4 in front of the number is the perfect number, says the economy god. But like, I don't know. I haven't seen any kind of modeling or any kind of evidence to show that that's necessarily real or preferred, or it just seems to be anytime you deal with like common knowledge or accepted wisdom, that's the time when I start to go, okay, well, why? Why do we think that 4% is the perfect number? Especially given all of the changes that have happened in the economy, all the casualization of labor, you know, a bunch of economic work that's no longer being sort of like economic activity that doesn't factor into that number, like Uber Eats and things like that, where they're sort of like not even casual employees. And also since the pandemic, like tens of thousands of women have just like permanently dropped out of the workforce in order to be carers, which is like, that doesn't factor into the unemployment number. I don't know if you guys know that, but like people that are no longer searching for work are no longer considered unemployed in the number. So like, which is like comical. It's like something out of fucking, you know, utopia. Like, so.
Well, it's hard to track people. Like, you don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So unless people are putting their hand up and saying, I'm looking for work.
But that is kind of wild.
But it's like, if you've given up because like finding work is completely hopeless for you and you've just like settled into a carer role, that person doesn't count towards the unemployment statistics. And so we're dealing with this like fake number and all of these assumptions of growth and wage growth that are not realistic and like not necessarily even based on facts and like real numbers. And we're factoring all of this into the budget and going, yeah, look, you know, after the unemployment number hits this particular milestone, then we'll start doing budget repair. Like what it revealed to me is that all of this is based on fucking fake nonsense. And you can just make up whatever assumptions you want and input them and feed them into the process. And you'll get whatever fucking result that you want that's most politically beneficial to you by going, yeah, we were counting on super duper growth. Turns out we only got this. Like, yeah.
If you have a nice letterhead, then it makes it look a bit better.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Everything's predicated on nonsense and assumptions, much like this show.
I don't know. Doesn't that outrage you, Adam? You seem resigned to this.
Yeah, it's reality.
He's resigned to bed, looking at the time because we've gone way over.
Who cares? Fuck it, we'll do it live. I'm 3 wines in. Who cares?
No, it's the system is broken.
I agree. That's very infuriating. And there was some points actually about the unemployment number there you had, George, that I was not aware of. That's insane. Fuck. Everything's terrible.
I don't know. Like, yes, it's broken, but like, how do you fix it? I don't know. We could try.
try harder.
Just do anything rather than allow people who can't afford to take on debt to take on more debt. Like, rather than allow people to dip into the people who can very least afford it to dip into their own superannuation to borrow to fund this additional housing. But could we try anything? Could we try anything at all to try and help get these people?
We We should probably dig up rather than dig down.
Well,
Is the case we've got right now.
Let's just tune into the ABC's budget review panel on whatever night it is this week, and we'll find out. Find out what the government's going to do.
Yeah,
and
we'll
we can all have a wine together and cry in a circle.
We'll play the budget drinking game, which is you drink and then you don't stop drinking and then you walk into the ocean. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world, that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and motherfucking YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us down to 33poker33 on Twitch, asking us if we're developing our third eye. So
is that what they asked, actually?
He asked a lot of things. In the vital essence of the over 1,000 zombie apocalypse movies that have been created, do any of you believe a cannibalistic holocaust could happen? Where would it happen? And in what realm of perception would the event generate from? Those are the kind of questions you can expect from 33 Poker 33.
Oh my. We do not have the time to get into that.
Well, I do have an answer, but we'll cover that next week.
Next week. And we'll pop that in the vault and we'll
come back to you.
We're way over time. But the answer is New Guinea. So there you go. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
As opposed to Old Guinea.
Good one. This is why you get paid the big bucks.
Yep.